Commander Zora Blackmore stood at the observation deck of Earth Defense Station Sentinel, her amber eyes fixed on the approaching Valerian vessel. The alien ship's crystalline structure caught the sunlight, creating prismatic patterns across the station's reinforced windows. At 42, Zora had earned her position through decades of service, though nothing in her experience had prepared her for this moment. "They're hailing us again, Commander," Lieutenant James Harrison reported, his dark fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "Their warrior champion seems insistent." Zara suppressed a smile. The Valerians had arrived 3 days ago, their fleet of lightweight ships hovering just beyond Mars' orbit. Instead of the expected diplomatic envoys, they had sent their greatest warrior to evaluate humanity's worthiness for contact. "Put him through, Lieutenant." Zara straightened her midnight blue uniform, adorned with the silver insignia of Earth's United Defense Force. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Thexlar, the Valerian champion. His iridescent scales shifted colors with each movement, a biological display of his species' adaptive evolution in low-gravity environments. His elongated frame towered at nearly 8 feet, though Zora knew that height meant little in the zero-gravity environment he was used to. "Commander Blackmore." Thexlar's translator conveyed his musical language with a hint of condescension. "I grow weary of your delays. The Valerian Empire cannot waste time with species too primitive to provide proper challenge. Allow me to demonstrate our superiority in combat, and we can conclude this evaluation." "Champion Thexlar," Zara replied evenly. "As I've explained, Earth's combat protocols require proper safety measures. We're preparing the training facility to accommodate your unique physiology." "Accommodations." Thexlar's scales flashed a brilliant purple, indicating amusement in Valerian body language. "Your atmosphere is barely dense enough to sustain cognitive function. What possible challenges could your gravity-bound species present?" Behind Zora, several bridge officers exchanged knowing looks. Humanity had encountered other species before, though none as proudly ignorant of terrestrial conditions as the Valerians. Their entire civilization had evolved in orbital habitats, their bodies adapted to minimal gravitational forces. "Perhaps a demonstration would be more convincing than an explanation," Zora suggested. "Our training facility is ready. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to continue this discussion from the safety of your ship." The challenge in her voice was subtle but clear. Thexlar's scales rippled with indignation. "Prepare your docking protocols, Commander. I will show you the true meaning of combat prowess." As the transmission ended, Lieutenant Harrison approached Zora. "The gravitational adjustments are ready in Training Bay 3. Dr. Rivera confirms the medical team is standing by." "Excellent." Zora checked her tactical display. "Have our guest escorted directly to the training bay. Let's not spoil the surprise too early." The next hour passed in careful preparation. Zara supervised the final checks personally, ensuring that the training bay's gravity would remain at Earth normal levels. The Valerians' database had provided extensive information about their physical capabilities, though their arrogance had prevented them from requesting similar data about humans. When Thexlar arrived, his entrance was appropriately theatrical. He glided through the zero-gravity corridor with fluid grace, his combat armor a seamless mixture of crystalline plates and flowing fabric. 2 junior officers escorted him, their magnetic boots ensuring they didn't float away. "Welcome to Sentinel Station." Zara greeted him at the training bay's entrance. "Are you ready to begin?" "I have studied thousands of combat forms across the galaxy," Thexlar declared. "Your primitive techniques will be an amusing diversion, nothing more." Zara gestured to the training bay's door. "After you, champion." The moment Thexlar crossed the threshold, his graceful movement transformed into an ungainly stumble. Earth normal gravity took hold, and the mighty Valerian warrior crashed to his knees. His scales flashed chaotic patterns of shock and disbelief as his body struggled against forces it had never experienced. What is this treachery?" he gasped, his translator barely keeping up with his distressed vocals. "This," Zora explained calmly, walking into the room with perfect composure, is standard Earth gravity. The force that shaped our species, forged our bodies, and taught us the meaning of true strength. She moved around the struggling warrior, her movements deliberate and controlled. No treachery, champion. Just physics. Thexlar attempted to rise, his powerful muscles straining against the unfamiliar weight of his own body. Impossible. Your species evolved in these conditions. Not just evolved, Zara corrected, offering him a hand. We thrived. Now, shall we discuss that combat demonstration you were so eager to provide? The Valerian warrior stared at her offered hand, his scales shifting to a deep blue of humility. For the first time since their encounter began, Thexlar looked at Commander Blackmore not with condescension, but with dawning respect. Perhaps, he admitted, accepting her help to stand on shaking legs, I have made some incorrect assumptions about humanity's capabilities. Zara smiled. That's a good start, champion. Now, how about we begin your first lesson in understanding why Earth's children are stronger than you imagined? 2 weeks into his gravity training, Thexlar found himself questioning everything he'd ever believed about physical strength. The training bay of Sentinel Station had become both his crucible and classroom, with Commander Blackmore serving as an unexpectedly patient instructor. Your body is fighting itself, Zara observed, watching the Valerian warrior attempt a basic walking sequence. His iridescent scales had dulled slightly, adapting to conserve energy under Earth's gravity. You're still moving as if you're in zeroed. You need to work with gravity, not against it. Thexlar paused, his breathing heavy but controlled. In our histories, we abandoned planetary surfaces as a sign of evolution. We saw gravity as a chain to be broken. He attempted another step, this time focusing on the weight transfer Zara had demonstrated. Yet you humans, you've turned this burden into strength. Different paths of evolution, different kinds of strength. Zara replied, moving closer to adjust his stance. Here, feel the difference. She positioned herself beside him, demonstrating the natural rhythm of human movement. Your body is incredibly adaptable. You just need to teach it a new dance. The Valerian warrior's scales shifted to a contemplative green as he mimicked her movements. Over the past weeks, his initial arrogance had given way to genuine curiosity. Each small victory against Earth's gravity felt more meaningful than any of his previous combat achievements. Their training session was interrupted by Lieutenant Harrison's urgent voice over the intercom. Commander Blackmore, priority message from Valerian High Command. They're demanding Champion Thexlar's immediate return. Zara and Thexlar exchanged glances. Put it through to the training bay, she ordered. The holographic display materialized, showing Supreme Executor Relith, her crystalline armor marking her as one of the Valerian Empire's highest authorities. Her scales blazed with aggressive red patterns. Champion Thexlar, the Executor's translated voice carried clear disapproval. You have exceeded your evaluation timeline by 13 cycles. Your continued exposure to primitive conditions risks contaminating your enhanced genetics. Thexlar straightened, fighting to maintain his dignity under Earth's gravity. Supreme Executor, my extended stay has revealed crucial information about human capabilities. Their adaptation to high-gravity environments suggests. It suggests nothing. Ryleth cut him off. The Empire has received disturbing reports about your training activities. Subjecting yourself to barbaric gravitational forces, engaging in physical combat with lesser beings. This is unacceptable. Zara stepped forward, her expression neutral, but her voice carrying authority. Supreme Executor, if I may. Champion Thexlar's willingness to understand our environment has opened valuable channels for future cooperation between our species. Cooperation. Ryleth's scales flashed with derision. The Valerian Empire does not cooperate with gravity-bound primitives. Champion, you will return immediately for genetic purification and reassignment. Something shifted in Thexlar's posture, a subtle change that Zara recognized from their training. His scales cycled through colors before settling on a determined blue she'd never seen before. "Supreme Executor," he said carefully, "I must respectfully decline." The silence that followed was deafening. Ryleth's image flickered as she processed his response. "Explain yourself, champion. The humans have shown me that our perceived superiority is based on ignorance." Vexler continued, each word measured. "Their mastery of gravity isn't primitive. It's a different form of evolution, one that offers insights we've been too proud to consider." "You've been corrupted," Ryleth hissed. "Your mind is clearly affected by the gravitational stress. A retrieval team will face the same conditions I have." Vexler interrupted. "And they will learn, as I have, that strength comes in many forms." He turned to Zora. "Commander, I formally request asylum on Earth Station Sentinel." Zara didn't hesitate. "Granted, Champion Vexler. Under Earth defense protocols, you are under our protection." Ryleth's image trembled with rage. "This is an act of war, Commander Blackmore. The Empire will not tolerate the theft of our genetic excellence." "With respect, Supreme Executor," Zora replied calmly, "your champion made a choice based on first-hand experience, something your empire claims to value. Perhaps it's time for the Valerian Empire to gravity test its assumptions." The transmission cut off abruptly. In the silence that followed, Vexler turned to Zora, his movements now showing hints of human-like efficiency under gravity. "They will come," he said simply. "I know." Zora activated her tactical display, already tracking increased activity in the Valerian fleet. "But they'll have to adapt quickly if they want to face us on our terms." She smiled slightly. "Fortunately, I have an experienced gravity combat instructor ready to help prepare our defenses." Vexler's scales rippled with determination and something else. Pride, but different from his former arrogance. "Commander Blackmore," he said, attempting a human-style respectful nod, "I believe it's time to accelerate our training program." As they began planning their defense, both warrior and commander understood that they had crossed a threshold. The coming conflict would test not just their physical strength, but the power of their newfound understanding. Earth's gravity had forged an unlikely alliance, one that would soon shake the foundations of the Valerian Empire's rigid beliefs. The attack came 3 days later, but not in the way anyone expected. Sentinel Station's warning systems detected the Valerian ships just as they emerged from faster-than-light travel, their crystalline hulls glowing with unusual energy signatures. "Those aren't standard Valerian warships," Vexler observed from his position at the tactical station, his scales shifting to a wary amber. After days of intensive training, he had adapted enough to serve alongside the human crew. "The energy patterns are wrong." Zara studied the tactical display, noting the strange configurations of the approaching vessels. "Lieutenant Harrison, full scan on those ships. Something's not right about their movement patterns." "Scans coming through now, Commander." Harrison's fingers flew across his console. They're running their gravity compensation systems at unprecedented levels. The power output is off the charts." Before anyone could respond, the lead Valerian ship broadcast a transmission across all frequencies. The holographic display materialized, but instead of Supreme Executor Ryleth, it showed a figure Vexler clearly hadn't expected. His scales flashed white with shock. "Grand Architect Vorkath," he breathed. "The Empire's chief scientist." The figure on the screen was unlike any Valerian they'd seen. Where most of the species had iridescent scales, Vorkath's body seemed to shimmer with artificial enhancements, crystalline implants merging with biological tissue. "Champion Vexler." Vorkath's translated voice carried an unsettling mechanical undertone. "Your defection has provided an unexpected opportunity. The humans' gravity adaptation protocols will make excellent data points for our evolution project." Zara stepped forward. "Your ships are in Earth defense space. Architect, state your intentions clearly." "Ah, Commander Blackmore." Vorkath's augmented eyes focused on her with unnatural intensity. "Your species' primitive attachment to gravitational forces is about to serve a greater purpose. The Ascension Protocol must be tested." Thexlar's scales shifted to a deep purple of realization. "The forbidden research," he said. "The Council shut down your gravity manipulation experiments decades ago." "The Council lacks vision," Vorkath replied. "Why adapt to gravity when we can master it completely? Your training facility has proven that even Valerian biology can be conditioned to tolerate primitive conditions. Now, imagine the reverse." The tactical display suddenly blazed with warnings. The Valerian ships were powering up their enhanced gravity systems, creating distortion fields that began to reach toward the station. "They're trying to create a zero-gravity bubble around Sentinel," Harrison reported, his voice tense. "If they succeed, they'll negate Earth's gravity influence entirely." "Not just negate it," Thexlar corrected, his hands moving across the tactical controls with growing confidence. "They're trying to impose Valerian standard gravity. The strain on the station's structural integrity would be catastrophic." Zara activated the station-wide alert system. "All personnel, gravity disruption protocols in effect. Secure all stations and prepare for gravitational fluctuations." She turned to Thexlar. "Those ships, what are their weaknesses?" "The gravity manipulation systems require incredible power," he replied, analyzing the sensor data. "They've sacrificed conventional defenses to maintain the distortion field. But Vorkath is brilliant, even by our standards. He won't have left an obvious vulnerability." The station shuddered as the first gravity waves hit. Around them, loose objects began to float, then slam back down as competing gravitational forces fought for dominance. The crew, trained for various space phenomena, activated their magnetic boots and emergency tethers. "Commander," Harrison called out, "we're detecting similar gravity distortions across the solar system. They're not just targeting us, they're trying to alter Earth's entire gravity well." Vorkath's image smiled, his crystalline implants catching the light. "The Ascension Protocol will free all species from their gravitational chains. Those who survive will evolve. Those who don't," he shrugged. "Natural selection has always favored the adaptable." Zara watched as her crew fought to maintain their stations against the shifting gravity. Then she noticed something, a pattern in the chaos. "Thexlar, your training. Remember what we learned about working with gravity, not against it." The Valerian warrior studied the sensor readings, his scales shifting to a thoughtful blue. "The waves, they're following a resonance pattern. If we could match it, then redirect it. Like a gravity aikido," Zora finished. "Lieutenant Harrison, reconfigure our station's gravity plating. Instead of fighting the distortion, we'll amplify it, then reflect it back." That level of gravimetric feedback could tear their ships apart, Thexlar warned, though his scales now showed eager anticipation. "Then they shouldn't have picked a fight with a gravity-bound species," Zara replied with a grim smile. "Execute the reconfiguration. Let's show them what Earth's children can really do." As they worked to counter Vorkath's attack, Zara and Thexlar realized this was more than a battle between ships or species. It was a clash between two philosophies, one seeking to dominate natural forces, the other learning to dance with them. The question was, which approach would prove stronger in the end? The synchronized dance of gravity manipulation began as Sentinel Station's crew executed their daring plan. Through the viewport, space itself seemed to ripple as competing gravitational forces clashed in silent warfare. "Gravitational feedback loop established," Lieutenant Harrison reported, his voice steady despite the strain of maintaining his position. "We're channeling the distortion waves through the station's reinforced structural grid." Thexlar's scales flickered with concentration as he monitored the tactical display. "The resonance pattern is building. Vorkath's ships are maintaining their attack formation, but their power signatures are fluctuating." "They don't understand what we're doing," Zora observed, watching the enemy fleet's movements. "They're so focused on overwhelming us with force, they can't see we're using their own energy against them." The station groaned under the stress of redirecting such massive gravitational forces. Warning lights flashed across multiple decks as systems struggled to compensate. Through it all, the crew worked with practiced precision, their training under varying gravity conditions proving invaluable. Vorkath's image reappeared on the command center's main screen, his crystalline implants pulsing with agitation. Your resistance is futile, Commander. You cannot hope to match our gravitational mastery with your primitive technology. Primitive. Zara allowed herself a small smile. Maybe you should check your power readings, Architect. Your ships seem to be working awfully hard for such superior technology. As if on cue, alarms blared across the enemy fleet. The gravimetric feedback was beginning to overwhelm their carefully calibrated systems. Vorkath's augmented eyes widened as he received the damage reports. Impossible, he muttered. The calculations were perfect. The Ascension Protocol cannot fail. You're making the same mistake I did, Thexler called out to his former superior. Thinking that mastery means domination. The humans taught me that true strength comes from understanding and adaptation, not control. Troops, prepare for impact. Zara broadcast across the station. Harrison, initiate final resonance pulse on my mark. The tension in the command center was palpable as they watched the energy readings climb. Sentinel Station had become a gravity lens, focusing and redirecting the very forces meant to destroy it. Years of defending Earth against various threats had taught humanity the value of turning an enemy's strength into a weakness. Their containment fields are failing, Thexler reported, his scales now glowing with a fierce blue light. One more push shoulder. His words were cut off by a blinding flash from Vorkath's flagship. The architectural scientist had apparently decided to make one final desperate attempt to overcome their defense. He's overloading their core. Thexlar's scales paled. The gravitational cascade could tear apart half the solar system. Zara's mind raced through options before settling on an audacious plan. Harrison, reverse polarity on the feedback loop. Thexlar, I need your expertise on Valerian ship systems. Can we create a gravity well to contain the explosion? Yes, but we have to be precise. His fingers flew across the controls. Too strong, and will cause the very disaster we're trying to prevent. Too weak, and the explosion escapes. Then we'll do what we do best, Zara declared. We'll find the perfect balance. What followed was a masterpiece of cooperation between human and Valerian technology. Sentinel Station's gravity plating, originally designed to simulate Earth normal conditions, was repurposed to create a controlled field around Vorkath's fleet. The enemy ships, their systems already strained by the feedback loop, found themselves caught in an artificial gravity web. Containment field holding at 60%. Harrison called out. But our power grid is reaching critical levels. Zara watched as warning indicators spread across her tactical display. They were pushing the station's systems far beyond their designed limits. Thexlar, how long until the cascade reaction peaks? 30 seconds, maybe less. His scales had taken on a deep purple hue of concentrated effort. Commander, I have an idea, but it's risky. If we time the collapse of our containment field precisely with the peak of the cascade, the forces could cancel each other out, Zora finished, seeing where his thoughts led. But if our timing is off by even a fraction of a second, then we'll time it perfectly. Vexlar's voice carried a confidence born from their weeks of training together. After all, you taught me how to dance with gravity. On the main screen, they could see Vorkath's ships beginning to break apart under the competing gravitational stresses. The architect's final transmission showed his augmented features contorted with rage and disbelief before cutting out entirely. Cascade reaction reaching critical point, Harrison announced. Containment field at maximum strain. Ready on my mark, Zara commanded, her eyes fixed on the sensor readings. Time seemed to slow as she watched the energy patterns build toward their peak. All their training, all their learning about each other's strengths and weaknesses had led to this moment. Now, the containment field collapsed precisely as the cascade reaction reached its zenith. For a heart-stopping moment, the forces threatened to tear free of their calculated intersection. Then, like waves meeting and canceling each other out, the gravitational energies began to dissipate. Energy readings dropping, Harrison reported, relief evident in his voice. The cascade reaction is collapsing in on itself. Where Vorkat's fleet had been, there was now only a slowly stabilizing region of space. The thread of his ascension protocol had been ended not through superior force, but through the combined understanding of two species working in harmony with natural laws. As the emergency lights dimmed and normal gravity reasserted itself, Zara turned to find Thexlar watching her, with an expression she'd learned to read despite his alien features. "I believe," he said softly, "this qualifies as a rather impressive training session." Zara nodded, a smile playing at her lips. And to think, this all started because someone thought Earth's gravity wasn't worth respecting. Thexlar's scales shifted to a color she'd never seen before, perhaps the Valerian equivalent of embarrassed amusement. "Some lessons," he admitted, "are best learned the hard way." 1 month after the defeat of Vorkat's fleet, Sentinel Station hosted an unprecedented gathering. The observation deck, usually reserved for tactical monitoring, had been transformed into a diplomatic chamber where representatives from both Earth and the Valerian Empire convened to forge a new path forward. Commander Zara Blackmore stood at the ceremonial podium, her presence commanding attention from both human and Valerian delegates. Beside her, Thexlar's scales shimmered with a calm blue confidence that would have been impossible for him to maintain under Earth's gravity just weeks ago. "The events we witnessed were not just a clash of technologies," Zara addressed the assembled dignitaries, "but a testament to the power of understanding rather than domination. The Ascension Protocol failed not because of insufficient force, but because it fought against the very nature of gravity itself." The new Supreme Executor, Valthos, moved forward with careful grace. Like many Valerians who had witnessed the battle's outcome, she had begun her own gravity adaptation training. "The Empire's pursuit of genetic perfection led us down a dangerous path," she acknowledged. "Champion Thexlar's experience has opened our eyes to alternative forms of evolution." "Evolution," Thexlar spoke, his translator conveying the subtle harmonics of his native language, "doesn't always mean leaving our origins behind. Sometimes it means understanding them better." His scales rippled with remembered wisdom. Earth's gravity wasn't a chain to break, but a teacher to learn from. Lieutenant Harrison, now promoted to Chief of Operations, brought up a holographic display showing the new joint training facility under construction in Earth's orbit. The structure incorporated both human and Valerian design principles, creating zones of varying gravitational influence where both species could train and learn together. "The facility will serve as more than a training ground," Harrison explained. "It's a symbol of how different evolutionary paths can converge and strengthen each other." The gathering watched as the hologram demonstrated the facility's unique features. Training zones that could shift between Earth normal gravity and Zerog environments would allow both species to understand each other's natural conditions. More importantly, it would foster the development of new techniques that combine their different strengths. "But the implications go beyond military applications," Zora continued. "Our scientists have already begun collaborating on new technologies that work with gravitational forces rather than against them. Imagine ships that can navigate gravity wells with unprecedented efficiency, or stations that can protect themselves from natural gravitational anomalies." Valthos's scales shifted to a thoughtful green. "The Empire's databases contain countless records of abandoned planetary colonies, worlds we deemed too demanding due to their gravitational conditions. Perhaps it's time to revisit them, with humanity's expertise to guide us. And perhaps," Thexlar added, "it's time for humans to learn from our experiences in zero-gravity environments. Together, we could explore regions of space that neither of our species could reach alone." As the diplomatic discussions continued, Zara found herself reflecting on how far they'd come. What had started as a simple training exercise had evolved into something far more significant, a fundamental shift in how two species viewed their place in the universe. Later, in the privacy of the command center, Zara and Thexlar watched Earth rotate below them. The Valerian warrior's movements had taken on a fluid grace that combined his species' natural agility with the grounded strength he'd learned from humans. The Empire scientists are already studying the recordings of our battle against Vorkath, Thexlar mentioned. They're calling it the Gravity Dance Protocol, though I doubt they'd fully understand the meaning yet. Zara smiled. They will. Just as you did, they'll learn that true strength isn't about fighting natural forces, but about finding harmony with them. She gestured to the stars beyond. There's a whole universe out there, filled with different gravities, different challenges. But now we can face them together. Together, Thexlar agreed, his scales shimmering with multiple colors. Blue for confidence, green for growth, and a new shade that seemed to represent something uniquely human Valerian. Though I must admit, I'm curious about one thing. Oh, now that we've mastered Earth's gravity, his translator conveyed a hint of playful challenge. Perhaps it's time for you to try training in zeroed conditions, without magnetic boots. Zara laughed, a sound that still fascinated Thexlar with its emotional depth. I suppose it's only fair. After all, evolution works both ways. As they began planning their next training session, both knew they were part of something larger than themselves. Their partnership had shown both species that strength comes in many forms, that adaptation doesn't mean abandoning one's nature, and that the greatest adventures begin when different worlds learn to dance together. The stars beckoned, promising new challenges and discoveries. But now, thanks to an arrogant warrior who learned humility and a commander who saw potential where others saw limitations, humanity and the Valerian Empire would face those challenges not as competitors, but as partners in an ever-evolving cosmic dance.